all these healthcare AI, voice AI, healthcare, whatever you want to call it, they're 99% of them are VC backed. Yet, even when we're seeing these companies getting funded, we're sitting here internally like we have more customers than all of these guys combined. We're doing more volume than all of these guys combined. And some of them are now in the Series A. And they're still in the same kind of idea phase, right? And we're just like, what's going on? So we found more success, and here's the difference between us and a typical healthcare AI company. We have an easier time. We can get a deal faster than anyone can write a check, right? And if everything were to fall apart, we can go get a deal tomorrow, right? Because it works. We have a product that works, and we have no facade behind this.
Welcome everyone to Copper Digital Podcast. I'm Arvind Sarin, and today I'm talking with Nathan, the CEO of Rivvi.ai. Nathan's story is one of the most authentic founder stories I've heard in healthcare. His girlfriend came home crying every day from her job at a primary care group's call center, and patients yelling at her, giant spreadsheets, micromanagement. It was, in his words, a blueprint for automation. 2 years later, Rivi is bootstrapped, profitable, and handling voice AI for primary care groups, pharmacies, and clinical trials as well. They've gone from 50,000 calls a month to working with New York City Department of Health, and every single deal they've closed has come from LinkedIn DM. Nathan, welcome.
Nice to be here. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about AI, talk about healthcare, and what the reality is. Yeah, super excited to be here.
Lovely. Well, take me back to the beginning, the story that I just butchered. Like, what exactly was happening?
Yeah, so I love to start every call, whether it's a sales call, an investor call, any conversation with, we were building AI when AI wasn't cool in healthcare. So, about 2 years ago, my girlfriend, like you said, was working at a call center for a large primary care organization. And at the time, she would come home every single day, just crying, bawling, just kind of expressing things that to me from a technical sense just really didn't click. And these kinds of situations and the problems she was facing was, like you said, a blueprint for automation. So, these processes of you have a call center that's given a gigantic Excel sheet and they're told, go call these patients for XYZ objective. As you can imagine, there may be some inefficiencies when you're dealing with an Excel sheet and calling patients with call center agents, right? So nobody wants to get a phone call during the day, let alone no call center agent wants to cold call patients all day and get hung up on. So it kind of started the idea of maybe we could use AI here. Maybe there's some automation we can do that can alleviate some of these issues. And as much as I love to say I'm analyzed the market, I saw the discrepancies, to be completely honest, the beginning was the solution I wanted to have was my girlfriend not crying. And that was the first goal. And we're able to accomplish that very early on, believe it or not. I like to say I'm the best boyfriend ever because it changed your job.
Oh.
But the reality was you have 30 call center agents that are on their team kind of flip-flopping from inbound to outbound, doing maybe less than 5% of what they need on the outbound side. Now their job completely changed. We came in and we took a look at their workflow. We took a look at the calls, right? We spoke with everyone we needed to speak to. Call center agents having the calls, their managers, the population health team, everyone we could possibly speak to. And we just fit conversational AI inside of this kind of workflow to handle these conversations. And then we automated the full process from getting the list to making the calls to getting the insights after these calls end, which is another thing that really was not at all happening, right? If you have an Excel sheet and you're giving it to call center agent, maybe you get a nice detailed notes column as far as patient said this. Now we're extracting insights that were never before seen. And that being said, they don't have to do outbound now. So believe it or not, we took them from 2,000 calls a month outbound to about 60,000 calls a month outbound. And now they're just manning inbound, kind of fielding in calls, and their inbound handle rate actually increased. And this was a big speculation. And voice AI at the time was very much taboo in healthcare. Most people are pretty weary of AI speaking to patients. But that being said, once you see success, everyone starts kind of coming up through the woodworks. What about this campaign? What about this use case? So that was kind of the origin story, but it really kind of spun off in many ways from there. But that core problem still exists today, and there's many organizations doing that exact process I just laid out, and hopefully we could change that.
Wow, wonderful. I hear you from that. There are many soul crushing jobs that really no one needs to be doing. And now that we have all this capability with AI, I mean, we got to make use of it. So, your background, you're a college dropout, self taught engineer, worked 20-hour days in Vegas for 2 years, you mentioned. How did that experience prepare you for building in healthcare?
It's a great question. So prior to my experience in Vegas, self-taught engineer, I dropped out of college, and somehow, some way, I found myself in a software engineering role at the early age of 21. And it was funny because I was actually working at 4 a.m. at Target every day, moving boxes, and I was at the time kind of doing online education for software engineering. And then I told my manager at Target, yeah, I quit. I got the job. I'm trying to learn. So yeah, that's kind of settled. And my first kind of introduction into the engineering work environment was a very big and prominent thing in my life, right? So as an engineer, as someone who's young and wants to build really good products and has any level of passion to what they're doing, being in an environment that is the opposite of that is very eye-opening. So that was the beginning. I worked at a software company for close to a year, and the leadership was not engineering led. The overall cadence was 9 to 5, clock in, clock out. And this is something that, I very much drilled into my brain forever. This is how you not run a software company. So I told myself, when I have the opportunity to run something like this, I'm going to do it the exact opposite of what I'm seeing. So go to Vegas. That software company I was working at, actually, I started my own thing on the side. That led to me generating my salary in a few months. So I kind of said, hey, this isn't working out. Long story short, one of our customers at that software company I was working for was very upset that I was leaving the company and said, hey, we have a portfolio of companies. We want to fly you out to Vegas. We want you to come do business with us. And I said, well, I kind of have my own thing now. And they're completely okay with that. So flew out to Vegas. 2 weeks later, I moved to Vegas. That led to a little bit more of a confidence building phase where I was less treated as a young, bright-eyed engineer and more as somebody with serious insight on the business side. So portfolio of companies, I'm building and kind of developing solutions for 15, 17 different companies, working from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, whenever that is.
Nice.
And it was a very wide array of industries, from lead generation to e-commerce. And I got the full understanding of these different businesses, how they're operating, and how we can optimize these businesses. And after about a year of that, kind of day after day of working for 17 different organizations, you can't help but get drained, and you can't help but feel, I hate the word burnout, but something similar to that. And in looking in hindsight, I don't know why, but I got to a point where I was just, not extremely happy with the outcomes, yet I was delivering my piece of the pie. And then I said, you know what? AI is getting really good right now. I don't want to do this work for these other people and not see the end of the tunnel. Let me just go all in on AI right now. So financially, probably not the best decision. Many people would say, keep that revenue coming in, keep working with all those organizations, why kind of stop something that's working? And at the time, I don't know what the answer was. I just, for some reason, was very compelled and was just all in on AI. And healthcare was completely not in the picture up until this point. But after being about 6 months just fully down the rabbit hole of AI, and this is in 2021, 2022, I moved from Vegas to Georgia, Vegas to Atlanta, Georgia, which is an interesting change of location, to say the least. But healthcare in Atlanta is a little bit more prominent. So I was introduced into somewhat of healthcare entities that are around the area. I moved to Georgia and I started a development, brand development, all of the kind of skill set that I've developed over the past years. I kind of pushed that into the healthcare space. And I'm not sure if you've seen your doctor's website, but there's very likely not a good website. So, we really just looked at healthcare in that lens of marketing, digital marketing, so on. So that kind of built up somewhat of a client base in that domain. And that kind of led to my girlfriend then working for one of these organizations. And I had built the website for this organization as well. And yeah, I was mind blown at what this workflow was, coming outside of healthcare and then getting an inside look at what's really going on. I would like to say it's surprising, but whatever the level is above that, that's where it is, right? You would imagine that the more critical things in life or in industry would be taken at a little bit more of a serious and technical level. And it's quite the opposite. So, when I look at everything that I've done, whether it's, helping people generate leads for solar, helping people sell CBD gummies, turmeric gummies, supplements, things like that. I just, wanted to put my efforts towards something that would have impact. And I know everyone loves to say, I want to make a big impact. I want to do something for the greater good of the people. But even from a financial standpoint and a business standpoint, what better industry to really excel in and to go all in on than healthcare? And after I took a look at what they're doing with an Excel sheet, I'm like a kid in a candy shop, right? I love hard problems, and the healthcare space seems like the problem space is never ending, right? It is any technical person, any problem solver. I challenge you to look into anything in healthcare. You could look at any single subsector has issues, and you can't do all of it, but using your expertise and putting it towards an initiative and even just a category that's going to make a bigger impact is something that really interests me. And yeah, I guess the problem space is a challenging one. So
I love it. I didn't know that backstory there, but very interesting. So the way that you first started was you identified that, okay, well, you know what, healthcare's got a lot of problems, and then you knew obviously from your marketing background and leads generation stuff and other stuff in marketing that you had helped in sort of demand generation and distribution. Those skills you were able to utilize, and essentially you said, I'm going to utilize those skills for the healthcare industry because I'm seeing their websites like shit. And you just really wanted to have an impact and say, guys, like, I can help you. But then until then, you weren't still like thinking voice AI. You were thinking, yes, there can be automation, maybe some marketing. I don't know if you were at that time, but that's still early. That's prior to even chat GPT moment. So tell me more about like how that got into voice AI.
yeah, so and want to add this one in there. The first introduction to digital marketing in healthcare was a company that I knew in the area had reached out to me and said, can you take a look at this invoice? Because we just got invoiced by our marketing agency and we're very unclear on the line items. And it was about 30 grand for a WordPress site. So, right, that's the tip of the iceberg, really. Voice AI, it really kind of was derived from the problem. Like I say this in every single call, I never say we're building AI products. We have the best AI products. We're solving a problem, right? If voice AI needs to be the part that is gelled in with the solution to actually provide one, that's what it needs to be. But we're solving the problem. So, when I took a look, and I kid you not, almost on a daily basis, I'm hearing horror stories from my girlfriend on what their workflow is. So getting an inside look to that workflow, we broke it down into there's data that's coming in, and that data now needs to be outbound called, and it's patients on these rows. You're calling the patient for ABC campaign, and then we're needing to get insights. And the notes column aspect I mentioned earlier was what was happening. They're getting an Excel sheet, they're calling the patient, and they're adding a column and just kind of typing in as they go on. Patient said this, retry tomorrow, right? Now, when at the time, this was very early on. You're right about that. That's why I like to say it was very much taboo. And people say now, you have to have all this governance and all of these safety measures before any healthcare organization is going to even consider using your product. Now, imagine that 2 years ago, right? It was very much a process that we had to go through in order to get even the first calls live. So at the time, voice AI was being used in the enterprise, more in like a pizza delivery organization or things like this, where healthcare was very much out of the picture for use cases. Now, with this type of, hey, we need to get data, call patients, unless we're using humans, it's kind of one solution that can fit inside of here. The way you automate the data, the way you store the analysis and the processes you do outside of that call are completely up to you. I mean, you can go 0 to 1 your own infrastructure. You can use automation tools. You can really do a wide spectrum of solutions to kind of automate these things. But conversational AI, voice AI was needed, right? We needed to have these calls and interact with the patient to fill that gap. And early on, it was very difficult. There was no evaluation suites and 100 times less tooling that was available back then. So it was a very difficult process to get live. And that being said, the first customer we're working with is also a large enterprise customer. So we can't just ship a little tiny beta MVP that's going to not be able to converse properly with patients. It needs to be airtight. So that was very much a long process, a very difficult process in terms of when you compare to now. There was no understanding of AI. People now go on LinkedIn every day and see healthcare AI is doing this, AI is doing that. 2 years ago, you had to just almost explain what AI is before you even started the conversation on what you're going to do. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely go in on what that took, but yeah, we just looked at the problem, broke the problem down. Voice AI fit the need that we've required in order to fill that solution and kind of develop from there.
I love it. I think, and that's a good lesson for, an aspiring entrepreneur in the audience to just really focus on the problem. And I remember even back when I was getting my MBA, this was the lesson that stayed for the entire 2 year course. We had a capstone course, and then the focus one was on market validation. The focus was on my professor. He had written this book, If You Build It, They Would Come, obviously. So it was really cool. They drove that point. And even after knowing that, sometimes I find myself getting super excited about some technology and be like, we got to somehow use this, we got to somehow use that. But the lesson for everybody is that just really focus on the problem. However, in your space, so you have a little bit more of a wider net in healthcare, unlike, let's say, our strategy at Copper. We're just kind of niching down on home health and solving their problem, although a lot of similarities in the sense that we said, hey, whatever the problem is for home health, we're going to solve it. It's not that we just got to solve documentation or the interoperability of the document, like the HNPs that are coming from the referrals and stuff, or other stuff. So we didn't care exactly what problem, but whatever the customer would say that, hey, I'm really struggling with this, we would solve that problem. But we knew that we couldn't go super wide, and we had to just stay in home health. And it's so niche that you have to understand the process like really, really well. So that's what we did. You talked about, a lot of the claims on LinkedIn, of course. So you posted twice on LinkedIn and got 1 million impressions. Your calendar was completely blocked. What did you say that resonated so hard?
It's going to be a controversial one, definitely. So a little tiny backstory behind the post. So we're building in stealth, and when I say we, in the beginning, it was me and myself and I. We were building in stealth, and over pretty much a 6-7 month process, no one knew anything about what we were doing publicly. And one of the biggest things during that 6-month build phase, where we didn't ship a product, we were building a solution. The solution was live. We're running these calls. We didn't raise a bunch of money to build infrastructure, then figure it out. But one very important thing that we learned was surrounding the topic of an EMR. Now, if you're coming outside of healthcare and you're a technical person, whether you're non-technical, technical, the first instinct is we need EMR integration. for something like this. Let's say we're confirming an appointment or we're scheduling an appointment. Obviously, the AI can make an appointment scheduling tool call, right? It can confirm the appointment, reschedule the appointment. These are API endpoints, right? So when you think, let's get appointments scheduled through a voice AI or any type of AI, you think, let me go find the API documentation and see how we can integrate this. It's the normal kind of pathway you go down. So for that 6-month period, we had no integration and we actually had no request for integration, believe it or not. So we wanted to integrate after the 6-month period as we started to build the infrastructure behind the solutions we were already implementing. We went and I actually in person spoke with the COO of our first customer, and the EMR that they use is actually an investor in their company. So you would think, well, yeah, let's get access to your EMR. They should have access to it. Nonetheless, if there's issues with the EMR company, they should be able to kind of squash anything. They have mutual interest. So the COO went on to tell me 2 to 3 horror stories about vendors that they worked with that were great. They loved the product. It was already working. And then came the time to integrate to the EMR. Then everything blew up. There's one of them, the EMR vendor. And let me just, for anyone who doesn't understand this, if you're working with a medical group and that medical group uses ABC EMR, you would expect the medical group to be able to give you an endpoint, right? I can go to the medical group and say, hey, let's integrate. And maybe their IT team can kind of do that. And they can say, hey, yeah, here's the endpoint.
That's what's expected. Yeah,
That's not what happens.
I know very well.
That blew my mind. So if anyone's like, wow, that's crazy, look into that. And, you're pretty much completely beholden to the EMR's discretion on if they want to even let you come into their ecosystem. So I work with ABC, EMR. I'm trying to go get connected. The EMR can just say no. And they don't need to give you a reason. So some of the reasons the COO told me was, one of the reasons was we have a vertical competing product, so we don't want them to have the endpoint. Okay. The other one was they were pulling data and they asked the EMR, can we pull the data? Can we get the endpoint to pull the data? And they said, here, there you go, pull it. It's great. And they said, okay, well, we want to put the data back in there after we do our process. Well, that's going to be, 6 to 9 months. You're looking at 18, 20 grand. We'll get you with Jessica. Jessica's our project manager. Then you're going to talk with Tim. And now you're on a timeline that has nothing to do with your product. Right. So those few things kind of in the back of my mind, as much value you could get from having an integration to the EMR, the way that it's structured right now for the majority of EMRs, I won't say everyone, right? There's a few like
totally
Athena's, the doc.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the space as well. But I could tell you in home health as well. Oh my God, like I don't want to badmouth anybody, but all of them are just so scared, and I know they're the ones who are going to get so disrupted. I mean, it's kind of like back in early 2000s, which we hear stories about that, how Salesforce came in and disrupted a lot of these software vendors and went against Oracle, so they had no software. Similarly, there needs to be this campaign because so many people, including clinicians and even the home health agencies, are just so unhappy with it. So one day, I mean, I had finished all my work and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something here. And I created this noemr.one website. So this is literally an actual website, that you can go to right now. And this is like no EMR. And, hear it from the nurses. I mean, so yeah, we think alike. And this is an actual website with actual reviews of all of these EMRs. And like, I just want you to feel that passion of like how bad some of these things are. They make absolute no sense. Some of them have this old school technology that they just want you to like pay them, and there are other people, they have no other option but to pay them. And ultimately, Nathan, they're going to get disrupted so bad in the sense that we don't need these softwares. We just need those agents in the database and for them to do the work. So yeah, it's ridiculous. Check this out, later on. But I just wanted to show you because you're just talking exactly the kinds of things that I discovered being an outsider coming in. 2024 is when I did my first sort of podcast series, and knew that this is the space I wanted to work in.
Yeah, and I love to give this kind of example, right? So you look at any industry, let's say CRMs, right? If you're using a CRM, let's say you're a marketing company, you want to get a CRM. You have a lot of options. You have a lot of good options, right? You can go and get a completely AI native CRM now. You can go to HubSpot, you can go to Salesforce. You have a huge array of options you can choose from depending on your size, what you want, and they're all competing against each other. So the difference is, and I thought of this before I was in healthcare, it might start clicking for some people now, is the reason healthcare looks like it's 30 years behind as far as technology is because the CRMs have no issue integrating with all the tools you need to integrate with. And they're going to be competing on features against each other in a competitive market, which is what this whole thing's supposed to be, right? You're supposed to have this competition. If we had the ability to integrate as easy as we could integrate into Google Docs or into Slack or into any of these other programs that are not healthcare focused, you would have some of the best patient portals. You would have some of the best online scheduling tools. Patients would have the easiest pathway to access anything they want. You'd see new ideas, new startups coming out that are actually able to take hold of this core infrastructure that's needed to provide all these experiences. Now, your alternative solution, which is what we did, is after I spoke with that COO, it became pretty definitive in my mind that we're not going to integrate with the EMR. And it's somewhat more common now. But at the time, I mean, you tell an investor, or you tell someone you don't integrate to the EMR, even the co-founder, right? When I brought the co-founder on, he was like, we're not going to have any customers if we don't integrate with the EMR. We have to. It's core product. But if you can't deliver value to your customer without getting access to this thing that's going to now increase their cost, because if they charge you 50K, what are you going to do? Charge the customer 50K. If it takes you 6 months to integrate to the EMR, it might take you now 12 months to finish the actual product or the integration for the customer. These should not exist. I can't confidently or I cannot go talk to a customer and say, we're going to build your product when I don't know if we can actually build you the product. So that was very clear in my head, and it proved to be the right decision. But out of all this frustration of dealing with these EMRs and understanding how much of a difficult time they're making it for companies, that was the first post, right? So the first post
Okay,
was
got it. That's how
the
you showed the true frustration, and that's where you
yeah.
were
I
authentic
mean,
on.
I wanted to post on LinkedIn a little bit of, hey, we're coming out of stealth. Hey, we're doing this. But at the same time, I didn't want it to feel like a product pitch or we're just saying, hey, we do this. And if I kind of listed out what are the things that I'm actually frustrated about and what are the things that I could hold a conversation for hours about completely authentically. The EMR was the biggest one. And whether it's Epic, whether it's any specific EMR, majority of them fall under this category. And you'd be surprised. I mean, you're probably not as surprised, but it's pretty shocking how many people feel the same way. The first post was about, how these guys are kind of creating this, I wouldn't maybe call it a monopoly, somewhat of a restricted access to innovation is what I like to think of it as. But we spoke about that and we said, that's why we're not integrating. That's why we choose not to, right? If we can deliver value without it, it's almost a trick question when a customer asks you if you integrate. Because if you say yes, then they're going to think in their head, well, I got to go talk to Tim. Now we got to get the EMR on board and it's a nightmare. So that got a huge reaction from pretty much everyone in the healthcare space. And my DMs were just, oh my gosh, I love the posts that you made. I have nightmare stories about Epic. I have nightmare stories about the EMR. And you get the odd outlier of, hey, the EMR is great. I actually love the EMR. Everyone loves the EMR. But even in those comments, it's just other people now attacking that person saying, who likes the EMR? And it was a very it was very much a huge resonator for a lot of people, and it brought in the people that we wanted um, to target anyways. And I like that you said Salesforce did that, because what's funny is when I was about to make that post, it felt like kind of, oh, if I make this post, right, like it's kind of there's no going back after you kind of say some of these things. And I kind of try to fact check everything, quadruple check everything. Are you sure you want to post this? And I was doing some research and I saw that the CEO or the founder of Salesforce did a very similar thing and essentially called out everybody that is now his customer. And
Yeah,
I
Mark Benioff, one of my favorites. He's awesome. He's doing a good job. Although I don't know if even Salesforce is going to survive this whole AI wave. Although I mean, he's invested in the right people. He's invested in Anthropic. He's got like all the latest information he's getting from Dario and Anthropic CEO. And
yeah
then he acquired Slack. And he says that there's a bunch of data that he has. So he's got strategy. And in fact, I hear and I listen to him and get ideas. But I think the main thing that I'm getting, the key insight is that you found a problem that was that big that it didn't matter. Like they, even if it was a buggy product, I mean, which it wasn't, and maybe initially was, but like that's what I feel like. If you found a good problem that they're really hurting, they're going to ask you, no, 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 whatever you say, we're going to adjust and we're going to innovate together to make things work instead of asking for these crazy demands, right? Or crazy things that may or may not be possible. And it happened to us as well. If your customer is asking you too many things, oh, but I need this as well, that means you haven't found the right problem. It looks like you found the right problem. And through LinkedIn, you were able to get that initial traction. And since then as well, every deal you've closed has been a LinkedIn DM, you mentioned, and no paid marketing, no sales team. How does that work at scale?
That's a great question. So right now I would say our main challenge is managing all of the inbound. And like you said, that it's very wide array of customer types coming in, which, from that first post, it wasn't necessarily only people DMing me and saying, hey, I hate Epic too. Can I buy your product? Far from that. I mean, we had ex Epic engineers giving us kind of insight, but it followed the same kind of suit of see the problem you're solving for these people. We have this problem in this kind of part of the space. So let's say, our first customer was primary care, and then a community pharmacy chain reached out to us and said, do you ever think about getting into the pharmacy space? Because I have a huge Excel sheet right now that we need to call and seems like it would be a fit. So we've continuously got those from vertical to vertical, and it's really solving the same core problem, right? You need to reach out, you need to engage a large amount of patients or any amount of patients. The default mechanism in order to achieve these results are human labor. And not that we're the replace your whole job, replace all your staff, get rid of everything, give them their job back. If you're a clinical pharmacist and they're spending 40 hours a week on the phone, which one of our clinical pharmacists, one of our customers was, they're no longer a clinical pharmacist. They're a call center agent at most. And they're
Yeah.
spending, most of their time doing something that was zero part of their job description, of their training, of anything. So kind of touching the LinkedIn aspect is, I posted that one, went so viral that I was like, kind of like, how do I continue this? How do I, it was very authentic, which was good because it wasn't something that I couldn't continue to do. But from then, I've continued to kind of pull similar type of numbers in a same type of context, right? Where people resonate with other people who understand the issues going on. So the cool part about it is we live in these issues every day, right? It's not necessarily I'm doing market research and seeing like what the most controversial topic is. I'm living these experiences. So anything I'm posting has to fit a few check boxes for me. Like it has to be something that I have experience with, I have knowledge about, I've experienced myself, something that frustrates me, right? And as much as I like to say I know the LinkedIn algorithm, I think, the authenticity really shows. And, we've had people reach out from a post that had nothing to do with our product. A lot of them don't. a lot of them are on purpose. And some people just reach out and say, I really like what you're saying. How can we do anything together? What do you guys do? So these conversations have been like not just, hey, I'm having meetings, right? Like we're closing deals from a DM, completely organic. And that's pretty much just whichever ones I pull out of the hat. Like I, as much as I love LinkedIn, it's great. I wish they had some level of automation tools or something, because you can't really do anything that's going to pull at scale. We're not reaching out or doing like scaled outreach, scaled outbound, anything like that. So it's quite literally, oh, I try to scroll through my DMs or my comments and reply. But then at the same time, I'm running a company. So it's like our initiative to get more of that, or the way we get more of that is by me posting more. And I have to tell myself to post. I have to tell myself to sit down and write a post. And that's what I did the first time I ever posted that went super mega viral. I never posted on LinkedIn. And it was a push and pull on, do I spend my time doing this right now? I have all these other things I can do that I think are important. I think I need to build this, build this, build this. Ends up paying off every time. And you know, I would say it to anyone who wants to get some traction on LinkedIn, or you know, do somewhat of the same, get some of the same results. I would say, you know, try to write about something you actually have some context on. Try to write about something that when you're about to post it, you're kind of like, I don't know if I should post this because it's kind of out there. That's the one when you post it. If it feels like it's a solid LinkedIn post, you're not going to get anything from that. You gotta get close to the line. You got to get close to the edge, right? You know, and
can't be always too comfortable.
It has the reverse effect that you think it would. If I'm going out there and very blatantly talking about an organization and things that are happening in that organization, I don't think of it as I'm cutting ties with the possibility of that organization. And it does a few things. The Salesforce case is something I actually did research before I posted something like that. I was like, okay, well, it seems like people who speak out on things very publicly, that the people they're talking about ends up being their customer, right? And there's some, I guess, psychology behind that, right? If you go work with the person who obviously knows a lot about your business and publicly is kind of outspoken about the issues, working with that person might be a good idea. But you also get the exact people who know those problems. So one thing I will tell you that I definitely felt was every people, you know, let's say I want to target primary care clinics and I want to go reach out primary care clinics. I could pull thousands of primary care clinics, thousands of them. And then I could try to go figure out what EMR they have and spend all that time doing that. But you try to narrow it down as much as possible to people who will resonate with what you're doing and will really kind of have an alignment, a mutual alignment on this product. Now, if you're posting about like the frustrations that came into this product and some of the problems, you essentially get a very, very specific targeted audience that's going to reach out to you. It's going to be the exact customers that you want, and maybe the ones you don't know about. So I theorize that would happen, but it very much does happen. You don't have to join a call with someone and then find out, yeah, this isn't going to work, or they actually don't want what we're doing. They need EMR integration. You're only going to get people who are going to want what you're delivering. And it makes that whole sales kind of discovery onboarding process like 10 times easier.
Love it. No, that's great advice, and what an insightful journey you shared. I think, you know, you find people with those common frustrations and build that community around it. I mean, I think that's marvelous. Let's switch gears a little bit on funding topics. So you're bootstrapped and profitable, and in a world where everyone's raising hundreds of millions of dollars, why did you choose that path?
You know, initially, we didn't start off thinking we're going to bootstrap this to where we are today. And I guess everything happens for a reason. We're in a much better position than if we would have taken any of those early VC checks. But yeah, so I would say early on, that was VC was something that we definitely had in mind. We applied to YC multiple times. We were reached out to by Andreessen Horowitz very early on. We're actually included in their B2B voice agent market map in January of 25. So I had all the conversations. But it's interesting, you would think, let's say at the time we had, one, two people, including myself, and we had a customer that was the largest independent medical group in the Southeast. 300,000 patients, 70 locations, 200 providers, and we have a working product. So I guess the stars aligned, but we never, the YC never materialized, the Andreessen never materialized. And I can't help but think that it happened for a reason. Because what I will tell you from all of the VC conversations we've had and what I've taken away from VC is it's somewhat of a lottery pick, and I completely understand, if you bet on 100 different companies, you hope that one's going to really excel and then pay for all the other losses. Me as a founder, I don't really like being a lottery ticket, right? If we are a pre-seed, pre-idea company, I get it. But that's not the case, right? And we have more fundamentals than a series A type company that goes a typical VC track. So at some point, it didn't even make the most sense. And it wasn't really until we spoke with growth equity. And I've very much at that point have grown past the bright-eyed, you're a VC, let me give you my pitch deck, tell me how good my company is. I sat down with these guys and said, pitch me growth equity. What is growth equity? What's the difference? Why would I go with growth equity other than the VC or PE? What's your pitch? It's essentially boils down to, betting on the right company, not as a lottery ticket, betting on the founders, truly founder-led and betting on a company that has actual business fundamentals. Now, if you look in the space right now, and I'll tell you actually something really funny about this, but all these healthcare AI, voice AI, healthcare, whatever you want to call it, they're 99% of them are VC backed. Yet, even when we're seeing these companies getting funded, we're sitting here internally like, we have more customers than all of these guys combined. We're doing more volume than all of these guys combined. And some of them are now in the Series A. And they're still in the same kind of idea phase, right? And we're just like, what's going on? So we found more success. And here's the difference between us and a typical healthcare AI company. We have an easier time. We can get a deal faster than anyone can write a check. And if everything were to fall apart, we can go get a deal tomorrow because it works. We have a product that works and we have no facade behind this company.
You're solving a real problem.
You're solving a real problem. So the difference is, we're constantly trying to tell people that just because we're a healthcare AI company, we're not the typical VC vaporware idea company. And so I never start the conversation with AI, do AI. And I do tell people we're not VC backed. Right. It's a huge differentiator.
I think what you did right was also get a little bit of revenue initially, right? And that always helps for obviously companies that may not, or they may be in the space. Again, not taking anything away from the ones who choose that path. It's difficult. Here's another take that I'd like to offer to you. See, if you have too much money, then you go ahead and solve all sorts of problems and you stop prioritizing. So that's why by design, I am not raising money, even though like in the past decade, copper has done really well and we've got money stashed. But even that, I've put barriers that, hey, there is no access to that money. It's going to be at least 3 months or 6 months until, you got to tell me why we need all that money. I've done my budgeting exercise and our business, right? We talk offline a lot. I've got 17 different voice agents that I've built for home health. Pre-admissions calls, provider calls, patient monitoring. But as you know, like the fundamental problem we're solving is a little bit different. And that's why sometimes unless we scale, unless we have those hundreds of thousands of calls and learnings from them, I don't feel as confident. And I'm okay to accept that. And that's why I think we started talking about Rivi running a pilot with us and being sort of our voice AI layer. So, testing in sandbox and all that good stuff. because I feel like remote patient monitoring is huge for us. And like what we're really doing is in between those home health visits, we are making calls, like daily calls, asking the patient how they're feeling. And if it's getting worse, we update the care plan and we pull in the visits. So we are preventing the rehospitalization. And that in today's world where there's all this compliance and fraud and abuse and many other factors, of course, I mean, that's really helping us, and that's why this partnership makes sense. I mean, and you said it too, right? You said I should stay focused on documentation and let you sort of handle the voice. Do you want to sort of explain a little bit more for others in the audience as well, that may be looking and being excited about voice AI and they have a use case for voice AI, but why should they focus on solving the core problem? And like it makes sense for us.
Yeah, so I would say this is another one that's been inbound to us as far as the idea. But whether you're a copper digital, whether you provide a technology solution, a gig economy model, no matter what type of company you are, if you're providing some type of clinical process, clinical solution to healthcare organizations, pharmacy, life sciences, whatever it may be, and there is a point in your process or in any of your workflows where a phone call needs to be made, Rivvi.ai. Because, if I get the same thing from founders where they'll say, we know we need AI in here. We know we need voice AI in here. In some cases, their customers are trying to find that solution on their own. And then you're kind of missing the full picture of the solution. And there's not a lot of companies, I'm not very aware of any, that are saying, rather than us selling to your customers at Copper Digital, we want to power your company with the latest and greatest conversational AI tools. Whatever the use case is, if it's an inbound homegrown system, if you're using whatever, does not matter, right? So the focus needs to be on what you're solving. And for us, this is what we're solving. And we can continue with going to a medical group, going to health systems. We've had success with all of these things, but the place we see the bigger impact happening is for companies like Copper Digital and many others where you have a platform, you have some type of product offering, solution offering, whether there's humans involved or not. If you need or have any part of your stack that has a call within it, conversational AI is going to be needed at some point, and either you're going to try to figure it out or you can get it right from the beginning. So the more that compounds on the Rivi side, it benefits everyone. So, and at the same time, I don't want to run a 50-person sales team. I don't want to run a 10-person sales team. We want to focus on building the best technology possible. And that's what we're focused on every single day. The larger distribution methods we can get, the better. But we want to power organizations that may be almost competing with some of these healthcare AI, voice AI companies who want to come in and take the whole thing. We want to be the powering kind of layer that's going to allow them to compete on the same level. Then you have the clinical expertise. You can kind of really go deep into your lane and then have the backing that they're also trying to provide without the clinical expertise. So it's just the combination of the two will work. And the more we scale that out, the better it's going to get. But
no, I agree. I think, you said it last time too, like since 2026, something's changed, something's shifted. And I think I'm seeing the same thing. Like we're sitting end of Q1 now, and the way that some of these technologies are changing, I mean, the capabilities of even the frontier models, it's just mind blowing.
We were introduced to a company about 3 weeks ago. We were introduced. They said, "Hey, we have this use case." Hopped on a call with the CEO, and one of the biggest questions he kept asking was, "How fast can you get this live?" And although it's a huge selling point for us, it's not necessarily the biggest question people are going to ask. So I kind of found it a little odd. So, wanting to under promise, over deliver. And I said, a week. We'll have it live in a week. Back of my head wanted to say a day. I said a week. Mm-hmm. Now, come to find out, the reason they asked that is because for the past 12 weeks, they've been working with a different voice AI company in healthcare, a company who raised $5 million VC seed round a year ago.
Companies that raised around that amount, 4.5, 5.
Yeah, totally. The 5 million a year ago. So 12 weeks, they said that they haven't had anything get delivered. So long story short, they just signed yesterday. It took about a week for us to go from, hey, nice to meet you, to the deal signed. We
Nice.
got the
Congratulations.
notification. I appreciate it. Well, let's say they told us on Friday, we've requested to be released from our contract and we'll let you know. Got the confirmation. Meanwhile, that same voice AI company is posting on social media 20K booth at some conference about something while they're sitting there releasing from a contract. So there's two different types of companies. And if we go down the VC route, we're going to get bundled into that
That's a
group
good
as
point.
well, right?
Now it
So
makes sense. When you have too much money, you're just trying to find problems that are not there, or trying to, grow, but lose focus from the customer experience. Because I think that's going to be the moat in future. How you make the
uh,
customers feel. Because in 6 months, everybody, including a lot of stuff that I've put my blood, sweat, years, people are going to have. I mean,
oh
we're
yeah.
doing very complex, recursive prompt engineering to come up with Oasis, which is 120 fields that need to be filled, and there's another 700 fields that go in Kinser, which is one of the EMRs that was acquired by WellSky. But yeah, no, I hear you, and so if you want to tell the
So
audience
yeah.
on how they can find you and explore this solution with you.
Yeah, so to everyone out there, anyone who's interested in conversational AI, voice AI, and you want something that works, Rivvi.ai, Rivvi.ai. I would say reach out to me via LinkedIn, but probably not the best channel. But what I will preface is it doesn't matter what vertical you're in within healthcare, life sciences. We go all the way from pharmacy to primary care to oncology clinical trials. We will deliver value to you. And if it doesn't, you're not going to pay anything. So that's the difference between us and most other companies. We're that confident in delivering value that if not only are we that confident, but if it's not a fit for you, I can name 100 other companies where it's going to be a massive fit for. So we have no problem providing value. We have no problem with doing that. We're not going to block it behind a 20K paywall. We're going to provide value. Rivvi.ai. If anyone's interested in conversational AI for your platform, for your clinic, for whatever it may be, feel free to reach out and you'll have something delivered faster than you can think about it, I guess. I don't know a better analogy for that one, but deliver fast. Yeah.
Lovely. That sounds fantastic. And for those in home health dealing with documentation, that's what we're solving at Copper Digital. We're the TurboTax for Oasis. You can reach us at copperdigital.com or email me directly at arvind@copperdigital.com. Nathan, I appreciate you sharing the real story. Bootstrap, profitable, LinkedIn DMs, closing deals, conversation AI as a layer, not a product. This is how you build healthcare in true sense. Again, thank you, Nathan. Appreciate you coming on the
Thank you so
podcast.
much. Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it. And
Awesome.
hopefully next time it's going to be even bigger.
There you go.
And
Awesome.
thanks for having me.